Happy Halloween, chat! I originally wanted to make this video for last Halloween, but I kind of just forgot to, so I'm doing it this year instead. Today, I'm going to be taking a look back at Dead End Paranormal Park. Now, I've already made a few videos on this show, including individual reviews of the 2 seasons. So why am I making a new big video? Well, there's 2 reasons really. One, I just want to talk about the show again, and I want to go more in depth. And 2, I want to have a video on my channel reviewing the first season where I don't say some cringe shit like this. Now, I'm Sis. Yeah. So, let's begin. I'm going to be going through this episode by episode, starting with Episode 1 is great. I'd say it's pretty damn perfect in terms of setup and general establishment of the main characters and setting. The opening scene with Jennifer establishes the park's dark side right from the beginning, even before we meet Courtney, and combined with the blink until miss it appearance of Pauline's ghost, it perfectly sets up the big twist later on. As for how we're introduced to the main characters, I love the scene with Barney and his mother, and specifically this line.
Ugh, Mom, did you tell her I would be there?
Yeah, of course.
Did you tell her Barney would be there?
Oh, come on, sweetie. There's a lot she doesn't understand.
She's not the only one.
Even though he doesn't explicitly say it until the end of episode 2, this is a great way to introduce us to his struggles he faces as a trans guy, and making it very understandable why he would want to sleep at the park. And it's all done with just a few lines of dialogue. As for Norma, I love her. I made a whole video on why I love her. Her first scene is great. It not only serves to show us who she is by showing her room filled with Pauline Phoenix merch, but it uses that hyperfixation of hers to set up the climax of the episode, with the whole thing about photos trapping the souls. I also love how amazing she is in terms of autistic representation. The scene on the bus is a great example, with her having that mini panic attack before getting startled very easily by Barney. Courtney doesn't have that much screen time in this episode, but she still does what she does best: be silly. She's such a funny character. And Emily Osment's performance is definitely a big factor in that.
Welcome, mortals.
The whole cast is seriously great. Alex Brightman is just fantastic as Pugsley and Tema Lucas. I love how over-the-top evil he makes Tema Lucas sound, and his Pugsley voice is just adorable. And first appears in what might be one of the funniest cuts to credits I've seen.
Night, night, Pugsley.
Night, night, Barney.
Oh yeah. And the credits music fucking rules. It's such a banger. I've had it as my ringtone for... God, it's been so long I can't even remember. Definitely at least a year though. So that's episode 1. It was really good. Let's move on to... To begin with, the show's intro that first appears for this episode is pretty good. It's nothing incredible, but it's still very enjoyable. I especially love the bit where the camera just straight up whacks Courtney in the face. But anyway, the tunnel serves to flesh out Barney and Pugsley. It does this really well, with its story about Barney learning not to force Pugsley to hide his true self, and how that relates to him as a trans guy, who often feels like he can't just be himself. And that scene at the end is seriously amazing. The fact that kids have a show where a character can just straight up say, "I'm trans," is amazing. Representation like this is so important, especially when bigoted parents try to hide these things from their kids. The episode also uses this story incredibly well to build up other aspects of the show. We have Barney's initial neglect of Pugsley caused by him crushing on logs, which leads to them being separated and the mascots coming alive, showing that Tema Lucas is still partially in Pugsley. It also introduces us to Logs and Budya, and I think they were done pretty well. They're just kind of in this episode, Budya especially, since at least Logs got a whole thing with Barney, but Budya would get some pretty good scenes very soon with... I talked about this episode a lot in that aforementioned video about Norma and autism. It's amazing at showcasing her feelings around socialization as a result of that autism. It's done in both major ways, down to very simple things, like her wearing sunglasses to avoid eye contact. I think my favorite part of this episode is actually the animation and audio mixing in Norma's fear scene. This does an incredible job at showing how the world feels to many autistic people, including myself. And her fear world being the real world is something heavily relatable. I also love Norma's interaction with Barney and especially Badia. This scene is really great way to set up that friendship between the two of them. And aside from Norma, Barney's fear scene is also really great. I really love that we never actually hear what his grandma says to him. It really sells the idea that nobody even notices his struggles. So yeah, great episode. Something I haven't really mentioned yet is the comedy in the title cards. I love how many of them are just abrupt cuts like,
Guys, wait for me! Wait for me!
this show is so funny. I really love the running gag across this episode of Courtney trying to take Pugsley's eyes, building up to what's one of the funniest moments in the show.
No, wait! Help us!
Okay. Quick, Pugsley, give me your eyes!
What? No!
Worth a try.
There's also Gord, who is just peak. That's the only way to describe him. He's peak. But the episode's main focus is on Barney and his brother Patrick. I honestly don't have too much to say on Night of the Living Kids, except that I think it's good. I like the parallel shown between Cheryl and Linda and Barney and Patrick, with that broken relationship between siblings due to issues where one of them feels like they don't belong in their family. And there's a few bits of nice story progression with things like Pugsley's growing power and our first mention of Barbora. Anyway, time for the episode with the really hot guy. Yeah, you can add Hogs from this show to the cartoon men I'm in love with, alongside Ryan from Infinity Train, Knockout from Transformers Prime, and of course, my one true love, Captain Laramie Barriga. Yup, even in a video not about Steven Universe, I found a way to sneak in my obsession with Lars. Back on topic though, the last few episodes have been mostly focused on our main characters on an individual level, but now we get an episode that really goes into them as a group. We see Barney, Norma and Pugsley working together to solve all these challenges in Hogs's castle. But we also see them literally go through hell and back just to cheer up Courtney. It's got such a sweet ending. I haven't mentioned yet, but I really love Courtney's plotline about not being able to go home, which works with this episode's world building, where we really start learning more about the multiplane. We see one of the other planes for the first time, and the ending gives us our first appearance of Zagan, who'd of course be a pretty important character later on, who'd also get up to some gay behavior. Speaking of gay behavior, Barney and Logs are so adorable. I love all their interactions. Now, I know the body swap trope is often subject to a lot of criticism, but I ain't one of those people. Like, I'm the #1 fan of Our House's Once Upon a Swap. I love this episode. It may come across as mostly just comedy, but I really like what it has to say about Barney's anxieties, both in how he gets nervous around the boy he's crushing on, and how he's afraid of confronting his parents. But that comedy is still very funny.
If I don't eat anything in the next minute.
I know, you'll eat me. Can I at least finish this chapter?
And of course, I can't talk about this episode without mentioning the awesome supportive lesbians. We stand the supportive lesbian couple from Dead End Paranormal Park. This is also the last episode of the season that feels episodic. From the next episode to the finale, it's all back-to-back stories leading into each other. And this episode sets up some important things for that, the most obvious one being Jennifer Swan in the in-between, hinting that her body was possessed, which when combined with the fact that we don't see Pauline's face when she makes her brief appearance in this episode, and that ghostly presence in episode 1, you can pretty well predict what's happened. There's also the half Pugsley that we see, which, oh boy, I sure can't wait for that to get resolved. It's definitely gonna happen, isn't it? To start with, the plotline with Barney, I really love. There's not much I can really say that hasn't been said a million times about this episode. Its messaging about acceptance, in this case towards your child being trans, isn't something to thank. It's the bare minimum. And even though Barney's parents do take his words to heart and become better later on, I love how right now, he doesn't see them as family.
Norma?
Barney, we figured it out.
Excuse me, we're having a family discussion.
Oh, sorry. We didn't mean to.
So are we.
His family is the one he's found at Dead End, with Norma and Courtney, Also Pugsley, but he was already with him. He just talks now. And he also still sees Patrick as family, of course. And that's another thing I like. Patrick is a really great younger sibling character. He's someone who deeply loves his brother, but he's young. He doesn't really understand what's going on when he sees his family fighting. Now, onto Norma. I love all the interactions between her and Badia. I don't know, there's just something really authentic about them. I don't know why that's the word that came to my mind, but f it. I like the little bits of background plot progression, with the advert for Pauline's show and the stage for it being built, or how Norma briefly sees Pauline's life insurance ad and seems to not recognize it, which is surprising because why would Norma, of all people, not recognize something from Pauline Phoenix? And then we learn the reason she doesn't know about it, because Pauline tried to hide the evidence of the truth of what happened to her. It's a good way to build mystery, and I absolutely adore this ending. It's our first proper cliffhanger of the show. It makes me wish Netflix just released this show weekly like normal people. The reveal of Pauline being a ghost, which was hinted at from the beginning, Norma's heartbroken reaction to seeing the woman she idolized and hyperfixated on for 15 years was a horrible monster all along, and the music. Oh god, the music! One problem, I can't watch this episode without cringing. Not because of anything in the episode itself, but because this was the episode I was playing footage of in my old review when I said the horrific phrase. Now, I'm cis. Ugh. Well, we're in the final stretch now. Well, for season 1 at least. So let's talk about... Okay, I really don't have much to say about this episode. Not because it's bad, it's really good. It's just something where I'm like, yeah, I like that. First, I love how the font for the credits at the beginning is changed to fit this medieval setting. I also like going through all these different movie genres, and how things like color and aspect ratio are altered to suit them. I really like the scene where we learned how Pauline died, and how she'd just been possessing all the lookalikes. And like that last episode, I love Norma's reaction to learning all this information. I also really like Courtney's character here. She acts very rude, but we know deep down she cares about Norma, Barney, and Pugsley. We saw that last episode with her little tea party, and here it's very clear she's upset, but just didn't know how to react because she's not used to having people who would go through a deadly game show just to get her some mug. But now we move on to what is my favorite, and I'm sure many other people's favorite episode of the season. This episode, oh my god, what can I say? I'll never forget my first time watching this and hearing Josh go, right there, I knew this would be peak. You know I love Steven Universe, so it should be no surprise that I love a good musical. And this one is brilliant. All the songs are absolute bangers, and we get incredible singing from the whole cast. I did a song ranking back when this first came out, and my opinion hasn't really changed much. In that, my list from least favorite to favorite was Some Guy, Phantom of the Theme Park Reprise, Dead End, Phantom of the Theme Park, Down There, Dead End / Down There Reprise, My Frankenstein, Driver's Seat. My ranking now is exactly the same, except My Frankenstein and Driver's Seat are swapped. Holy shit, those two are brilliant. They're just awesome songs, period. It may suck that most of them never got proper releases on services like Spotify, but if it had to be just one, I'm glad it was My Frankenstein. This song just makes me feel so and I love the visuals surrounding it, and really all the songs, to be honest. It's also nice seeing it actually use the different types of musical songs, like Corny gets an I Want song, Tema Lucas and Pauline getting villain songs. And speaking on Pauline's, I love how it's not just the episode and song name paying obvious tribute to Phantom of the Opera, but the actual music itself. Despite putting Some Guy at the bottom of my list, I still really love it. Barney is so adorable about his crush, and this song gives me the most joy out of any of them. And from a story perspective, this is a great penultimate story. Everything's been building up nicely, like Tema Lucas's return, Courtney trying to leave to go back down there. Oh, there. My only real issue isn't actually one with this episode. I just kind of wish Zagan had made her first appearance a bit closer to this episode, but that's not that big of an issue. But on Zagan for a little bit, am I the only one who cannot understand this line at all without subtitles? I mean, after putting on the subtitles and learning what the line is, I can kind of hear it, but it just sounds off to me. Okay, first, I don't get why this is called Into the Fire. Like, what does that mean? But ignoring that, this is a great finale. I found myself really liking the action during Tamalukas and Zagan's fight scenes. But the main thing I love is everything centered around Courtney and Tamalukas. How they've changed because of Barney, Norma, and Pugsley. I love Courtney fighting the mug her human and dog family got her. Realizing home isn't just about where you come from, but it's with the people you love and who love you. Which is pretty fitting for what Courtney's story would become at the end of season 2. I don't know if this was intentional, but I'd like to think all these demons avoiding her could potentially be because they recognize her as a fallen angel. So possibly some nice foreshadowing there. And that's another thing. The angels. We're shown all the chaos brought by what demons can do. And if they're genuinely worried about what the angels could do, oh shit. I also really love the scene at the end with Barney and his parents. Like I said before, this whole situation was their responsibility to fix, not Barney's. And it's great to see Roxy and Saul now show a genuine effort to be and do better. And it all ends with that great cliffhanger with the Watcher and the ding of the elevator.
Maybe it's time those upstairs paid them a visit.
So yeah, that was season 1 and it's bloody fantastic. But oh boy, it's nothing compared to what's next. So let's begin season 2. Kicking off season 2 is another really great episode. I like seeing the new status quo established with Barney, Norma, Courtney and Pugsley going from security guards to the demon cleanup crew of Phoenix Parks, now run by Barbara, and a lot of the season-wide arcs are really well established here. We don't go too deep into them because that would be a lot to fit in just one episode, but I love getting all these wonderful scenes between Barney and Logs and Norma and Budya. With the latter, I like how it's made very clear from this episode, before being explicitly revealed next episode, that Norma is crushing on Budya. Courtney's character is great here. I love how it builds upon her arc from the season 1 finale, where she broke her friend's trust, and now she's still trying to fully earn that back, resulting in the scene where she forces herself to put her fears of Fingers aside to save them. And oh yeah, Fingers, he's really cool. I do really like his design. He's the only character who I can really think of that has a completely different design in the show than he did in the graphic novels. And I honestly much prefer this look for him. We also get our first look at a regular angel. And right here you can see the clues of Courtney's past, with how the angel's halo looks suspiciously familiar. So yeah, a great season opener. That episode was mostly set up, but now I really start seeing our 4 leads start their arcs for the season. For Courtney, it's all about her identity as a demon, through things like her arguments with Fingers about angel versus demon magic, which, after we learn that Courtney is a fallen angel, this scene really shows off just how awful Fingers and the other angels are. It shows the reality of the multiplane, and what's good and what's bad in the eyes of the angels is all made up. The angels don't like Courtney, so now she's just another demon. These are just labels put upon creatures across the multiplane based on whether or not the angels like them or not. And in that demon support group, we see her being more open about her feelings than we've ever seen before. It's also worth noting that these duplicates created by Pugsley are still the same characters, so when duplicate Courtney asks normal Courtney if she's sure she's a demon, it shows that regular Courtney has her doubts, even if she doesn't realize. Like I said, this episode gives us confirmation that Norma is crushing on Badya, which also confirms her as sapphic. She wouldn't be confirmed as specifically bisexual until a few episodes later, but this is still a really important moment for her. It follows the whole theme in this episode about our characters self-reflecting. In Barney's case, it's all about how he feels about Logs. He freaks out after telling him he loves him, which leads to him feeling whether or not he can have a stable relationship with him due to all the crazy demon things he gets involved with. These duplicates do a great job showing these inner conflicts. Alternate Barney represents Barney's fear of his demon life ruining his love life. Alternate Norma represents her feelings for Badya and her fear that she's scaring her away. And alternate Courtney helps regular Courtney be more open with herself and want to explore her identity further. And while the Sea of Pugsley clones don't really have a direct correlation with Pugsley's character arc, all these clones are still a result of Fingers abusing him. That hand is very aggressive with that poor boy, making it clear from the beginning that he's trading Pugsley entirely for selfish reasons. But at least Barney is here to remind him that only he can decide his future, even if it doesn't make sense as to why he's suddenly back at dead end, and also he has a Pugsley fez for some reason. It's almost like that scene from Doctor Who Series 5, Episode 5, Flesh and Stone, where the Doctor comforts Amy despite the fact that he's already left the area, and also he has his jacket despite him losing it in an earlier scene. Foreshadowing. I really don't have much to say about this episode. It introduces Asmodeus, who is a character I don't really have any strong feelings towards, but they do lean more positive. I don't know, I just don't like his design that much, I guess. It feels a bit basic to me. There's also one scene at the end that sets up the conflict between him and Barney and Logs' relationship, which should have had a bit more of a presence. I think the books did a much better job with that plot line. Hogs is here, and he's still hot. We also have another original song with Fight Like a Demon Boy. I like it, but it's not as good as anything from Phantom of the Theme Park. I really like Barney's arc about just being himself, and I also really like this little interaction between Norma and Courtney.
I got my first DWF card when I was only 109. A rare, first edition, holographic Grogan.
How can you remember that and not which plane you're from?
Norma, it's a shiny Grogan. Look, shiny.
It's very subtle, but it shows how Courtney is still afraid about learning about her past, since she completely dodges Norma's question. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. Another episode I don't have much to say about. It's just a nice story about our characters' insecurities that ends with them all being nice to each other. It's also pretty funny, both in terms of actual jokes,
I do not look like a croissant!
but also from my own personal perspective. So you see, back when the season came out, I took this frame from the episode to create this image. I don't know why I made it, but it's very funny to me, for no reason. It's very stupid. My humor is stupid. We also finally see the Watcher again, and I have two things to say about him. First, Fingers calling him to deal with Harmony shows that he's very much not in charge. We haven't seen him do anything except blast Pauline away, but from this, we know the Watcher is definitely a lot more powerful than Fingers. And second, we obviously know it's Pugsley, even without reading the books, because he's very clearly still voiced by Alex Brightman, even if there is a little effect on his voice.
Be gone, foul demon! I assume the humans solved the problem once again?
Yeah, that's very clearly Pugsley's voice, lol. Here's an episode where I seriously forgot how good it was. The beginning is great at showing Fingers' continued manipulation of Pugsley, using his anxieties around not being able to protect his friends from danger to further him in his magical growth. It also continues to build on plot with Pugsley's ring premonition and later journey into the future, something we unfortunately never got to see in the show. But the best part of the episode is its climax, and specifically its messaging about life, how you can't make life perfect, even when time traveling back to fix things. Sometimes life will be good, sometimes it will be bad, and we just have to live with it. I really like how it's shown at the end, once Pugsley stops time traveling and just lets events play out. Barney and Logs' arguments didn't end up resulting in anything bad. In fact, it turned out to be a really sweet moment. But for Norma and Badya, not so much. I really love this scene, but I can't really say why? Because a big reason is how it gets followed up in Dead End Year 3, The Divine Order. And I don't want to put any spoilers for that, so go read those books now. I also really want to mention how funny this line is.
Wait, Josh is an actor too?
Yeah, and Janelle, and Herc, and Jennifer.
Like, did I miss something? Is there another Jennifer besides Jennifer Swan? Because if she's the Jennifer Logs is talking about, yeah, no shit, she's an actor. That's what her job at the park is. What are you talking about, Logan? Anyway, plot really starts picking up in this next episode. There's a lot to love about my Super Sweet 1600. Let's start with Norma, Badia, and Zagan. I really do like this story. I like the way Badia is able to help Norma, just not in the way she was trying to do by hooking her up with Zagan. Her actions don't cause Norma and Zagan to fall in love and get together, but rather to help the two of them have a simple, relatable conversation. Norma feels overwhelmed by Badia trying to make everything right after what happened on the Ferris wheel, and Zagan feels overwhelmed by her friends throwing her these huge parties every year, and we see them happy again once they just get away from everything, resulting in Norma deciding to get away from everything at the park and quitting. I really like what they do with Courtney in this. This season does a great job at building up little hints towards her past. We now get introduced to Danny, kind of. He doesn't speak, but it's still yet another piece of the Courtney puzzle. Also, I know he's not named, but I feel like it's pretty safe to assume this is just Danny from the books. It would also be a sin for me to not mention the tragedy that is the loss of Danny's beard. This is just so depressing to me. His little beard was so cute. Let him have it back. I like the scenes of Pugsley and Tema Lucas together, and while we're on the characters voiced by Alex Brightman, can I just say how great and imposing his Watcher voice is?
The things I would do to you if those upstairs didn't have other plans.
I know I criticized it for obviously being him, making it clear the Watcher is Pugsley, but that doesn't change the fact that this performance is still great. As is his singing, of course, because we get yet another song this episode.
Well, I'm just a dog. That's what people say. Although I admit at the end of the day...
Pugsley's song is beautiful. I'd say it ranks about third on my song ranking of the show. This episode is really good at showing how shitty the Angels are. We clearly see that this party wasn't doing anything towards the Angels, yet they still want it shut down. The Watcher specifically says,
"This plane is dripping in wickedness. It's time the Angels reminded the demons of their place. Looks like you need a reminder too."
Yeah, why though, dude? Why are the Angels the ones on top? Why can they use portals but demons can't? But now we reach that episode. My favorite episode of Dead End Paranormal Park. This episode is so important to me. It's honestly kind of hard for me to truly put into words how much I love it. If you've watched my channel before, you know how much I adore shows like The Owl House and Steven Universe for the queer representation. Those shows are beautiful for how they portray queerness as something that's just normal, and I'm so glad kids can grow up with shows like them. But with Dead End, things are different. The queerness of its characters is shown as just normal, but it feels much more grounded in our world, with the struggles LGBTQ+ people face on a daily basis. I love The Owl House and Steven Universe, but I love Dead End for being so unashamed on what it's about. I know I talked about this earlier, but the fact that there's a kids show on Netflix where characters can straight up say, "I'm bisexual," or "I'm trans," is so important for all the young queer children growing up in this world filled with J.K. Rowlings. Hamish Steele mentioned on Twitter a little while ago how a show like this would be incredibly hard to pitch now, with how bigots have been getting more and more aggressive, causing capitalist studios to see representing us as unprofitable. I'm so glad the show was able to get made and get as far as it did, even if it was cancelled. I think Norma's scene of coming out to Logs is my favourite scene on the show. And having Logs be the one to comfort Norma through this is a really great choice. I always love stories that pair up characters who don't interact much. And his little talk with Norma is something that I'm sure has helped and will continue to help young queer kids understand themselves and help them through the coming out process. She even quite literally comes out of the closet. Sorry, this joke is so funny to me, I can't help it. Swati Khan is also an amazing character. She reminds me a lot of my own mum and how she interacts with Norma in relation to her autism and bisexuality. Something else I love is how this and the following episode play out at the same time. There's obviously super basic things like Logs coming to get the seance kit, but there's also the actual plot with Pauline, setting up the whole ghosts needing to finish unfinished business. I also like how All Dolled Up gives us hints to what happens in the other side. Logs is really sad and had a noticeable reaction to Norma asking him if Barney is dead, which probably wasn't helped by him just finishing fixing the Khan's chandelier, since, you know.
Me? Well, I think you'll find I can take care of mine.
This has got to be the funniest title card drop in the show. It's so abrupt, like what the f***? Anyway, this episode is pretty good. Again, like the last episode, I really love the explicit queerness of it.
Hello, I'm Jules. My pronouns are they, them.
That's really awesome. But I really don't have much to say about this episode if I'm being totally honest. Except that I really like the ending, and I think it's a great way to pay off Pugsley and Fingers' arc, and it's great setup for the finale. Bill Farmer is also in this, so I always just think of Hop Pop when I watch it.
I don't feel safe.
That's about it really. Finale time now. Absolutely amazing penultimate episode for a season. It's been vaguely talked about throughout the show, but now it's not trying to hide anything. The angels, or at least the ones without a broken halo, are the bad guys. Courtney is so good in this episode. It really shows how far she's grown in the series, where at the start she didn't give a fuck about humans and just wanted to be a demon with other demons. But now she finds out she's actually a fallen angel, freaks out for a bit, before going, fuck it, I need to save my human friends. Payal is first shown here, and I really love him. Now, most of that is just from the books, where he actually got to do things, but even from the little screen time he got in the show, he made a great impression, and I'm sure I would have loved him in this if Netflix weren't morons. He's just so intimidating by simply calmly speaking to Fingers, and we see Fingers get genuinely afraid, which means a lot when we've seen what Fingers is like. Even though the voice made it very predictable even without reading the books, the reveal of Pugsley being the Watcher is still very well edited together and scored.
You will become the Watcher.
Combined with it being right at the end of the episode, I think it's still a great reveal despite the predictability. I also love Gordon this episode. He's got to have one of the funniest moments of the entire show here.
Find us a way out. After you, Nerdma.
But now we reach it. The end of Dead End. Wow. Just wow. I'm writing this through a flood of tears. I said All Dolled Up was my favorite episode of the series, and this is an extremely close second. And like that episode, it's kind of hard for me to put into words why I love it so much. But I'll try. The time travel is really cool in how it ties back to past episodes, like how we now know why that mascot tried talking to Barney back in the tunnel. But then there's Barney in Evil Twins Are People Too, being from the finale, which makes it exactly like that Doctor Who scene, since that was the same shit, with the Doctor in the finale of Season 5 flashing back to previous events and trying to influence future Amy by talking to past Amy, just like Barney does to Pugsley. And that's just not me making a dumb comparison. I asked Hamish Steele back when this came out, and he said, yeah, I did just steal that from Doctor Who. But putting aside my Doctor Who bias, the best part of the time travel is, of course, Barney taking the Watcher back to when he was a puppy. I really like how the ring vision he has in The Ride of a Lifetime seemed to be about the chandelier and Dead End. But then this episode is like, nope, get tricked lol, it was actually about the Watcher's halo. And then this scene.
Pugsley!
Well, I'm just a dog, that's what people say. Although I admit at the end of the day.
What can I even say? As soon as that ukulele starts playing, it's just instant, uncontrollable crying for me every time I watch it. The reason I put Pugsley's song so high in my song ranking is because of how it's used at this scene. And that's not even the most heartbreaking thing about this episode.
Night night, Barney.
His last words being the same as his first. Back then, it was comedic, but now it completely breaks me. It's a great example of how writing is so much more than the words you use. These scenes both have the words "Night Night Barney," but due to the context within the scenes, as well as Alex Brightman's delivery,
Night night, Barney.
Night night, Barney.
it completely changes meaning. But now we get to the unfortunate cliffhanger ending. Looking at this simply as setup for what could have been, I actually quite like it, but I can't really fully judge it since we never got to see that ending. Is what I would say if Dead End Year 3 The Divine Order wasn't a thing. This is the part of the video where I beg you to buy and read the Dead End Year books. If you like the show and wish we had a season 3, go read these. Don't just read the third, read the first two as well. There's quite a few differences from the show, and they're also just really good. The Divine Order was actually the first book to ever make me cry. I won't spoil anything, but for those who have read it, it was page 129. So yeah, this video is almost over, but as soon as it is, get off your ass and buy them. So, Dead End Paranormal Park. It was so great to rewatch this after so long. Its representations of queerness and neurodivergence are beautiful. I think people undervalue how important good representation is, and specifically representations of struggles people face in children's media. It's so awesome that kids can have a show like this, and it's really helped me too. Normal was one of the first times I truly felt seen as autistic by a character, and Barney helped me eventually come to the realization of me being gender fluid. And on top of that great representation, it's also a show with an amazing story through its themes of oppression, how bigots will try to dehumanize others to hold power. It's got amazing characters with beautiful relationships, whether they be platonic, familial, or romantic, and they all have amazing arcs.
Well, I've got your back.
Same.
Yeah, baby steps.
Norma! I was so worried about you. Hug?
Please.
It's got great songs, including a full musical. The animation is honestly pretty underrated to me. I really love the colors used. It's got a great voice cast who take great writing and make magic. And it's also just really funny.
And I suppose every great detective has to have a sidekick.
You mean partner?
No, I don't.
So yeah, that's it I guess. I hope you enjoyed the video. My name's Dr. Lummington. Like and subscribe to make me smile, and I'll see you later.